And we're live. Hi, guys. Welcome to Frank Talks number 7. Um, and I'm here with Roberto, Funky Freedom. Say hello, Roberto.
Hey, what's good, man?
There we go. The luscious afro right there.
Yeah,
So, oh, why am I getting feedback here? Are you hearing the feedback?
feedback?
Okay, I see what it's from. Hang on. It's from, I'm playing it live on YouTube. There we go. Okay.
I
I
see.
can't listen to myself and listen to
Yeah, it
myself
gets kind of
talking and
awkward when,
talk. Yeah, and then
right?
I'm just soothed by the sound of my own voice. So I just sit there
Exactly.
and go,
For,
oh. So
right?
Roberto,
For me, yeah.
we've been connected on Twitter
Hmm?
for almost a year now, right?
A year? Dude, I
Has it
don't
been?
remember because to be
Uh,
honest, like I had that other account, but then made another one because, well, just personally, I just wanted to make a name for myself for a change, at least do something with it because I
right.
made a lot of great connections through that website and
Mhm.
I didn't want to lose it. So
Yeah.
I didn't mind starting over. And it really
Well, I
was
know I.
like a false sense of fame too. And I'm not really into that now.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I
Mhm.
know I connected with a bunch of people. I connected with a bunch of people. What was it during YLS? YWLS was when I
Oh yeah,
first
the Young
discovered
Women's
Turning
Leadership
Point.
Conference.
That's when I first discovered Turning Point, and a bunch of people that were connected with that. Like my Twitter exploded
Really?
that week, and it was
Wow.
really cool. And I think that was the week that we started following each other, or at least the first time that I'd heard of you. Um, but yeah, so tell us a little
Right.
bit about yourself. Just briefly introduce yourself to the crowd.
Well, my name is Roberto and I'm a Nicaraguan American and I live outside of DC and I'm almost 25 years old in 10 days. So save the date if you want to. Yeah.
Make
And
sure you tweet him a happy birthday, guys.
I exactly like the white boy says. And also, as for my beliefs, like I've said before, I'm philosophically libertarian but politically unaffiliated. And I'll state the reasons why later too.
Right. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So you've written a bit for Redefined
Hmm.
Right. I've seen the hashtag around. I don't know if I've seen they've seen the handle around for Redefined Right. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if I've read any of their articles, but a lot of pretty solid
Well, I've
people that
just
I see
wrote a
write.
few. I've only wrote a few articles, but they're mostly toward the lifestyle side because what we want to do in Refine Right is kind of create a publication that's geared toward conservative and libertarians, but that in the sense is more refined. Hence the word of our, I mean, the handle of that website is Refined Right because we'd like to write stuff that is free of clickbaits and
Mhm.
false headlines.
Is it
Like we
refined
want
or
to give a
redefined?
voice for people. Refined,
Oh,
not
okay.
redefined. Yeah,
Okay. I've been reading
because
it
we
wrong
just don't
too.
want to be, because we just don't want to be a political website. We want to become something of a lifestyle too. That's
Mhm.
why, the most recent article I wrote was review on Get Out, which I saw back in March, which I thought was a pretty cool movie too. And I
Where
figured that's something that today's youth, especially those on the right who do lean on the right to the right wing, should watch.
mhm. Okay.
Yeah, because it's a clever movie because it's funny, but it's a horror movie. But at the same time, like I said in
Mhm.
that article, you see, it kind of takes a cue to what other great movies back in the 20th century did, like The
Mhm.
Clockwork Orange, Bonnie and Clyde, and The Godfather. They used a group of lowlives to criticize and reflect how dull and how boring American society has become in those days. But what
Mhm.
Get Out does, they use a group of ordinary looking people to criticize how hypocritical post racial America has become.
Hmm.
Exclusive
Interesting.
to the right, they actually criticize liberals too, which is something that most people our age, maybe who are older than us too,
Mhm.
they've overlooked for the past 8 years. I mean, it's like saying that just because Obama won, doesn't mean that racism actually went away for good.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's still a thing right out there, and it's like puts you in your face about those kind of issues.
Mm. Mm. Interesting.
So that's what I wrote about.
Yeah. We'll see if we can
Yeah.
find we'll see if we can find that article and just
Oh yeah, it's there.
post that in the description or something like that. Um, but so tell me, are you you're in college, correct?
Yeah, I'm still in college.
Okay. And what are you studying? You want to talk about that,
Well,
or
the
do you
thing
have any?
is, I'm about to change. The thing is, I'm about to change my major to something
Okay.
that is well within my purview. But that's all I'll say for now.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. You want to say that one more time?
I'm saying that I'm currently changing my major to something that's just falls well within my purview right now.
Mhm.
That's all I'll say right now.
Okay, that's all you're gonna say. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Cool. So
Even
do
though I
you
didn't have a terrible semester this year, I will save
right?
that. Mm.
So do you want to take up a career in politics or in writing or anything like that, or you just
Writing, I do see myself in something like that because I do think that my voice might be helpful for this
Mhm.
country. And
Right.
also, there isn't much Hispanic libertarians out there who
Yeah.
share the similar voices like mine. And I do want that to become more prominent too, but without all the silliness that libertarianism is associated with. Like, I do want to make something at least refined.
Right. Yeah.
I do see myself doing something like that. As for politics, it won't change.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't mind siding myself with certain people here and there, but to run for office, that's another thing. Who knows? Maybe I will, maybe I
Okay.
won't.
So you're
I
pretty
just can't really foreshadow what the future holds.
yeah. You just don't see yourself doing
I'm
that
just
right now
pragmatic.
because you're what?
Exactly.
You're not politically
I just don't
affiliated,
see myself.
so
Exactly.
right. Okay. Yeah. Kind of.
Besides, we have a long way to go since Trump already won. The GOP is controlling both houses right now, and people aren't really taking libertarianism seriously right now.
Hmm.
So it'll only be a matter of time until they'll see the consequences of what both the Obama and Trump administrations did.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So
All
it's
right.
too early for me to actually call my own shots right now.
Yeah. Well. Okay. So I guess that's a good. Okay. So your thoughts on Trump? I've always been a little mixed with my feelings on Trump. Are
Yeah,
you?
man, I've said this before on my Twitter. I like the early Trump because I've seen videos on YouTube where he's saying this stuff about how the political life is a sad life because
Mm-hmm.
not only you're going to get beat down, but also you're going to you're going to receive a lot of, how can I say it? You're going to receive a lot of criticism, even if your opinions aren't popular. But it's that's what the country really needs at the moment. But it's interesting because in those days, he said that in an interview with, I think, a woman from NBC. But
Hmm.
hear me out. It was 1980. He stated that, and it's prophetic to what
Hmm.
we're going through today. Pretty prophetic, if you ask me. Even though
Yeah.
nowadays, personally, I just don't trust him, given the state of his nature and his own politics in the past.
Hmm.
There's just something I just don't like about the guy. But I'm not saying that I completely hate him.
Right.
I just wish that he was. I just wish that he was more of the genius that he often talks about because he often talks like a businessman that usually hypes himself up as opposed to someone who is humble, who is more of a human being, of an
Yeah.
actual human being. And
Hmm.
I just wish he would leave his Twitter alone too at times,
Yeah.
in a mockery of the office. But that's to say that I'm only going after Trump because I've gone after Obama too.
Right.
I've paid attention for the past 8 years too, since I was like 16 years old. I mean, I still remember the time he got inaugurated. Like most of the people who lived in my area, they were excited, but I was like, this is not really a good idea, even though he's black. But I don't think I'll be a
Hmm.
fan of what's coming.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because I kind of knew what would happen. and I paid attention. I remembered how people would rave about how Obama and the economy and the stocks, they did well, even though nowadays the stocks are doing even better than what happened under Obama. Like,
Hmm.
which doesn't make any sense. Double
Hmm.
standard of media? Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised that the media isn't raving about that about Trump,
Hmm.
because obviously it's because it's Trump. They don't want to
Right.
give credit.
It's the political partisanship, and I said this in the last Frank Listens, because statistically we know that the majority of people uh, in the media are Democrats. It's just a fact. So you can expect
Yeah.
them to have that partisan bias. It's just a sad fact.
Speaking of which, maybe perhaps in the future, that's something I do want to combat, like that bias within the media, because there's got
Hmm.
to be multiple voices out there, not just Democrat or Republican, liberal and conservative.
Hmm.
Even though the political spectrum may seem like that, but I think it's possibly more three-dimensional than just liberal and conservative, because you have populists, you have libertarianism, you have the Green Party, you have socialism, you have maybe even capitalism too.
Hmm.
You have all these parties to choose from too, that other people can choose from too. That's
Hmm.
why the turnout wasn't really that good last year as opposed to 2012 and 2008.
Yeah. Well, wait, you're saying the turnout wasn't as good this year, this past year?
You know, I could be wrong, but on Wikipedia, I know that Wikipedia is like
Hmm.
anybody can cite whatever they want from there. They can edit or whatever. But if you look at the turnout number, I mean, the turnout percentage of that election is kind of low. I'm not saying it's historically low, just lower than 2012.
I had heard the opposite, and I
It's like
it's
in the
not something I
50s.
really it's not something I put a lot of stock into. Like I really don't doesn't
Hmm.
matter to me what the turnout was, but I'd heard the opposite. I'd heard that the turnout was like an all time high for this past election. Um,
According to who?
I like literally it was just a customer at work. Like I'm saying I just heard it. Someone say the turnout was high. Um, that's what I had heard. It wasn't anyone uh, particularly notable, just like some guy on the street. Um, but either way, um,
Yeah.
so okay, so you would like to go into writing and combating the the bias in the media. I think that's really cool. That's
Pretty
something.
much, but competitively too, because
Mhm.
it goes it just reflects what I think about the free market, because I'm not going to tell people that they shouldn't watch CNN or the MSN. It's like, the media is just what you make of it in the end, because
Mhm.
there's always going to be some other person out there just completely siding with whatever they read.
Right.
Yeah, even
Okay.
though nowadays the media, they just tend to use certain words that seem make their content seem questionable. Like they say the word source, sources, official, and I'm like, you're not even citing anybody. Like, why? It's just so fishy, man.
Yeah. Um.
Very fishy.
Yeah. So let's go into a little bit about your story, your background. So you're 25
Sure,
years
yeah.
old, right? And you
Hmm.
were talking about
Well, almost
how
25, yeah.
you're almost 25. Okay, so you're a little bit younger than I am. A couple years younger.
Yeah.
There we go.
Exactly.
Um, so tell us about your political journey. How did you get into politics, and how did you get to the position where you are right now?
Well, I mean, if you want a life story, I don't mind giving it to you. So, I mean, back in grade school, I remember how I used to pay attention to what went on TV, the Bush era, like 9/11 era too. Maybe part of the 2000 election too, because I still remember Florida, and also what happened to that Cuban kid, Elian Gonzalez, back when he had to get deported back to Cuba because he entered Florida illegally, even though under law, like the wet hand, the wet hands, wet feet policy, I think that's what it's called. that they
Hmm.
usually gave instant citizenship to anybody who emigrated from Cuba.
Hmm.
Like that, I mean, that kind of formed my views, and I still remember the time they had to deport the kid too. I mean, the kid, he was maybe 2 years younger than me, and it was kind of shocking how they treated him.
Hmm.
And it all happened with Clinton and the Democrats at an early age.
Hmm.
Even though I saw that happening in Univision, which, by the way, Univision, it's slightly to the left, and it's geared
Slightly.
toward Hispanics, which is surprising.
Hmm.
It's quite remarkable how at a young age I was able to form my own opinions like that, looking back. And also, I paid attention to the '04 election, how my old peers, they went for John Kerry, even though that John Kerry was a weak candidate. John Edwards, he was going through a scandal. Well, I told them I was going for Bush, and they were like, "Bro, why are you going for Bush? You know he wants to bomb Iraq more," knowing little that 8 years later Obama was going to do the same damage too, and he did.
Yeah.
And I remember in '08, I was maybe one of the few people who did not go for Obama just because he's black. I mean, I was even called racist. I even got called a racist just because of that. But that was kids' play back then. But still, I would have gotten a little more respect for that because I never called Obama like anything derogatory. Nowadays, he's a family man, human being, but his politics, I have issues with that. But
Yeah.
I don't fall into the belief that he's a socialist, he's a communist, because that's impossible because he definitely had connections with Wall Street, with all these super PACs and PACs,
Hmm.
and definitely most of the establishment too.
Hmm.
Reach to even say that he's a socialist, even
Right.
though
He's not a
Obamacare,
pure socialist anyway.
exactly.
Right.
I'd say I'd say he's just a corporatist.
Hmm.
That he just took advantage of the system.
Hmm.
Even though I remember in '09 he did express a few libertarian beliefs, and I think that Ron Paul did talk about that in his book End the Fed, which was published, I think, a little after Obama got inaugurated.
Hmm.
Like
Interesting.
as times went by, Ron Paul, he had to talk about the Fed because in those days the dollar wasn't that strong due to due to what the Federal Reserve did to it. Like they wouldn't raise interest rates, even though nowadays there are rumors that interest rates will be decreased, but who knows for sure? I mean, regardless of who's in charge of the Fed, the chair of the Fed, nothing will change. That's just how it
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
And going back to my tale, I still remember how we were kind of flirting with libertarianism around 2012 when Mitt Romney was there.
Hmm.
I started looking into Ron Paul. I started looking into the cats who were behind that movement too, not just Ron Paul, but like Penn Jillette, Gary Johnson, even though Gary, he kind of went downhill. People like them, but I wasn't into the Mises route yet. Mises, like Ludwig von Mises, who was
Okay.
a prominent figure in the Austrian School of Economics, which is a particular school that advocates the free market itself,
Right. Hmm.
as opposed to other schools like the Chicago School of Economics, which is like a offshoot of. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the pragmatic way toward a free market,
Hmm.
in my opinion. And it didn't take me long to really get exposed to libertarianism until I went to CPAC in 2013. And there, that's how I found out about the Young Americans for Liberty. And I
Hmm.
remember taking their small quiz there at one of their booths. And my result was how my beliefs were closer to Ted Cruz's, but Ted Cruz's, they were close to libertarianism. And I was quite surprised by that, even though that quiz only had 4 questions. But, like at the time, that kind of reflected where I was politically. And so I wanted to read about what libertarianism was because this whole time I had preconceptions that just all about weed legalization, gay marriage, all that stuff. But no, if you read the right material, you'd find out that it's more than just that.
Hmm.
Even though weed legalization, that's something that's up in the air right now because there's libertarians who want to make it illegal, but through the free market. And
Hmm.
then there's those who want to legalize it. And then there's people like me who just want to decriminalize it because I don't believe that it's really a crime to own whatever amount of marijuana you have, whether you're going to sell it or not, because everybody reacts to the drug differently. Because there's those who still use it in order to work. Like I remember reading an article about how hackers hired by the FBI can't get hired because they mostly smoke a lot of weed, bro. And that's what keeps them working somehow because they smoke a lot of weed. And due to the current laws, they can't get hired by the FBI to
Hmm.
fight off against other hackers who currently wreak havoc in our own cyberspace today.
Hmm.
But as I was saying, like it took me a while to learn about the basic tenets of libertarianism on my own. And I usually learn that through certain websites, certain videos. And for a while, I had a political blog on Tumblr too. Even though Tumblr is super liberal, I mean, you'd be surprised by how many blogs are conservative, Republican, and libertarian.
Hmm.
I usually learned from that too, and they were cited too. It wasn't until 2015 that I read this book called "Betrayal of the American Right" by Murray Rothbard that made me convince myself that I had to leave the GOP because I knew that personally the GOP was kind of betraying what it was going to use to stand for
Hmm.
with Trump. And it was maybe 3 weeks before Trump announced that he would be running for president of the United States.
Hmm.
So that was when I became an anarcho-capitalist, which is like an offset of libertarianism.
Hmm.
But nowadays, I just consider myself more of a right libertarian, the kind that believes that you should just get off of my lawn, but I don't think that anarchy is the way to go yet, even though it does make sense
Hmm.
once you go into detail about it. But given the current state of the world today, we're not going to go toward an anarcho-capitalist society yet.
Hmm.
So pragmatically, it's just best to work within the system. And it's worked too. I mean, you have libertarians out there, like this one man from Colorado who I think has been the mayor of that town since May 2009.
Hmm.
I remember reading about how he looked into every law that was passed in that town in detail, and he slashed most of the useless laws out, and they're currently thriving right now like crazy, even though it's kind of questionable because gambling was legalized there, so was prostitution. But other than that, it's the way to go.
Well, yeah,
So yes,
I definitely agree with fewer laws make better.
fewer laws, same with me. Lower taxes too, even though I think that taxation is theft, because I don't think that the government should have right to plunder off of you whether you like it or not. I think that the individual should make the choice whether or not they want to fund the road, which by the way, it's kind of ironic because most of the roads today in America are over 50 years old and
Mhm.
they need they're in need of dire repairs too while we're worrying about nonsense.
Mhm.
And
So,
most of the stimulus packages aren't going toward that too.
mhm. Mhm.
So yeah,
Okay, yeah. So, would you? We've talked about this on Twitter a little bit, so I guess this is cool to talk face to face. And when you're not on Twitter, you can have a more in-depth dialogue. So
exactly, yeah.
what are your thoughts on taxes? You seem to be advocating a totally voluntary system, like
Exactly. Even though
donations.
it does seem utopic,
Hmm.
but like I said, taxation is theft because I don't think that the government has the right to claim your property
Hmm.
with what regardless of their opinions. But that's one thing. And another, to put them in jail, to be fined for something that you don't want to pay for. But it just, I will say this, I do acknowledge that the US Constitution does state that Congress does have the power to impose taxes. But with that in mind, the less the better. I mean,
Hmm.
before 1913, this country was thriving, even though there were a few problems back then, like sexism and racism. But that's not just, whenever people tell me that just because I'm a capitalist, I want to return to the social norms back then, I respond, no, I don't want to go back toward that route. I want to work around what they had back then,
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
like
Yeah. We
the
are
income
about
tax wasn't even needed.
right, and we are about going forward. We're
Exactly.
about, we're about going
But
forward, and
it's more like this. We're going back to the past,
mhm.
but we're going forward, if that makes sense. It's
We're
like we're
going
kind of
back.
sampling the
We're
good
scaling
stuff.
back legally, but as far as innovation, as far as technology, we're going forward, and even in some ways societally, we should be going forward, right?
Exactly. And it's pretty trendy right now too that, well, speaking of trends, it's pretty trendy to become more right wing nowadays, even though the media tends
Mhm.
to discourage everyone to become right wing, but that actually in fact makes them more right wing.
Yeah.
It's just a psychological thing. Parent telling their daughter that they can't go out, but they go out.
Hmm.
They go out regardless, even if they seem like the obedient type.
Yeah. Hey, you might want to put some lights on in there because
Dark.
you're enveloped in
Just give me a moment.
it looks like it looks like we're hosting an interview with there we go. There's your face again.
Can you see now?
Yeah, yeah. It it looked
Good.
like, you ever
Yeah.
see like those interviews on the news where they're trying to hide someone, so they make it all dark and they change the voice up and everything.
Yeah.
It looked like one of those. It was great.
Yeah. Right. And they change your voices to something, to that generic deep voice.
Right. It's like it's deep and it's also like it's really wavy and stuff like that. So yeah. Um that was great.
Quite fluctuating too.
Um so yeah. Uh right. That had a lot of different things. I think we disagree on some points, and so I have to say this to my audience. Like I was going through and I say, but I don't particularly agree with Roberto on every point, and some points I'm not sure about. So you can go to my blog and you can figure out a little bit more about what I believe. But for those who are wondering, uh, I'm not here to talk about what I believe. I'm trying to talk with Roberto about what he believes and give him a platform. As far as taxes, though, switching back the camera back to you, I've been teasing about this for a while now. I want to start rolling out videos about this. I have a tax reform idea that I'm working on, and I want to talk with a lot of libertarians and people that are, especially people that are uh, have a better knowledge of economics than I do. But my idea is, of course, with taxes, income tax I think is ridiculous. I would prefer a sales
Hmm.
tax, and of course, I think we both agree with taxes, less is more, right? Less is
Yeah.
better. So I'm working on an idea that would give elected officials incentive to lower the tax rate. It's a really cool idea. I'm just not rolling it out just yet. So in the near future, in the not too distant future, the
True.
yeah, the the REM song. I
Well, it's
couldn't think
kind
of
of, it's like that analogy of those three people. It's like that analogy of those three people watching a baseball game. Have maybe one person, they're tall, right?
the.
And they don't need to stand on boxes, while the other person, they're neither tall nor short, but they kind of need a box, only one box to watch in order to watch the game. And you have the final person who wants to watch a game, but they're too short, so they have to just stand on two boxes, if that makes sense. If you've seen a picture like that.
Yeah, I'm visualizing it. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what I think of tax reform.
Mhm.
I mean, it should be something that is sensible for everybody, no matter what
Mhm.
income you're on.
Yeah.
But what I don't believe is that people should be in jail just because they haven't paid their taxes, which is ironic because most people today, especially the ones that are prominent within Hollywood and the left and in DC,
Mhm.
they haven't paid their taxes for years and they've gotten away with that. While
Yeah.
people like Trump being butchered over that, even though that Trump is still firmly standing strong on that. Even though I may not like the guy, but I do commend him on that.
Yeah. He paid his taxes. Give him props
Exactly.
for that. Yeah. All right. Well,
Mhm.
thanks
But
for
I do have the feeling that I do have
Yeah.
the feeling that I think he paid more than what he was required to pay for. I just have that feeling.
Yeah, and I'm sure he did. I'm sure he
I
could
could
have
be right. I
gotten.
could be wrong.
Right.
Could be right. I could be wrong, but who knows for sure?
Yeah, I'm sure he could have gotten more tax breaks, especially someone
Oh
who's,
yeah, he
who's that
did.
wealthy.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I remember reading his book Crippled America that he considered himself at the moment a conservative Republican, and that the reason being that he became a Democrat in the early days was because in those days everybody was a Democrat regardless of their beliefs. It was just
Mhm.
it was just part of the state psych, not as opposed to national psych, which was like the psychology behind the society he was the society and his environment that he was surrounded
well, he's from New York
with.
City, so it's understandable,
Exactly. Like
right?
he had to become a Democrat. He had to become a Democrat to, build relationships, build clientele too with everyone.
Right.
And that's why he was kind of quiet about his beliefs in those days.
Mhm.
Why he just went ahead and just real estate.
Yeah. Well, I think we've gone through the whole story. Probably could talk more, but I'd
Sure,
love to
yeah.
have you back on the show. Just stay here, and we'll talk a little bit after the live cast ends. So if you guys want to find Roberto, you can find him on Twitter at Funky Freedom, and
Right on, man.
and
Funky
also
freedom.
yeah, Funky Freedom. There we go. And on Redefine Right, we'll see if we can get some of those articles and post them in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and good night and good luck to us all.